Hello everyone, this is Yu Yang from Yole Intelligence in France. Today, I want to take 15 minutes to go through the main takeaways I took from the Shanghai Auto Show in April. As Yole is a market research company focused on semiconductor, I will also put a little bit more focus on the automotive semiconductor side. And personally, I have been to the Shanghai and the Beijing Auto Show in the past 10 years, except in the pandemic period. I have to say this is the most impressive event I have been. And also I'll explain a little bit why. So let's start from a kind of a summary of the main takeaways. So in a 10 days event, there were nearly 1 million visitors. So that's really a big number. And personally for me, what are the main things I want to share with you? First is about the market itself. So we are kind of to see really the phasing out of the traditional ICEs. And also in the local market, the Chinese OEMs, they are developing very fast in terms of electrification and also the smart cockpit or cabin infotainment system. And secondly, as I mentioned, that the semiconductor content of the show is pretty impressive. Even though it's an automotive show, as you can see here, there are really a bunch of semiconductor suppliers ranging from SoC, from power, from leader, and also others. They were in the show. That's quite unique. And the third but not last is the evolving EE architecture. And I think the centralized EE architecture is getting very popular and also is turning into reality. So we will go to the details of each of these points. The first thing I want to discuss with you is that why it matters to go to the Shanghai Auto Show. So China for sure is the biggest automotive market for almost 10 years. And this is the first event that since the fully open of the Chinese country border. So that's a lot of OEMs and tier ones, they were there to showing the state-of-the-art technologies. And I think here to make a summary, I want to cite the background from the BMW brand night. It says, what moves Chinese customers today will move the world tomorrow. And this show is really attracting a lot of attention from the leading OEMs. I think there's one nice example is that Volkswagen Group, they even chartered 2 flights from Germany and also bring basically the whole top management from the Volkswagen Group to really see the fast growing market. So that's why we think it really matters to have the close look at the show in China. So back to the points. The first one is about the market. And this is the one brand called Yangwang. That's a high-end brand recently launched by BYD. And I have to say is that normally in the auto show in China, it's the premium brand they attracted the most attention. But this year, I would say here is just one example of BYD Yangwang that is much more popular there. And also basically a lot of the Chinese local players, they are getting many more attention than before. And actually, this is also in accordance with the summarize of the electrification driving forces we had in the recent published power electronics for e-mobility report. So actually, China push we think is a key factor as a short-term drivers for the global electrification. And also there in the report we use the BYD as an example. BYD is really the first volume players. They made the transition from the ICE to the NEV, so it means PHEV and BEV. So let's look at some market numbers. And in China, we can see is that the top BEV players in last year, if you see by names, is that basically except Tesla and Volkswagen, they are all local players. So that's already one thing showing that the Chinese brand, they are developing very fast in electrification. And also in combination with this trend is that because of the leading position in electrification, the Chinese brand, they are also gaining market share. It's not only with the BEV, but also with the total market. So as you can see is that in the past years, the percentage of the Chinese brands in China is increasing pretty steadily. And also we want to see is that For the global NEV market, means BEV plus plug-in hybrid and also the fuel cell cars. The Chinese market volume, or the volume from the Chinese brands, they are also increasing quite dramatically. And also the share of that is also increasing very fast. So that's in the report. We also have the summary is that China is really in the leading position in terms of electrification compared to the rest of the world. That's also, I think, we come back to the side, the words from the BMW. What moves Chinese customers today will move the world tomorrow. So that's why we think it's really quite a striking fact is happening there. So because of the leading position in electrification, they are really turning the market dynamic. And also let's go beyond a little bit more about the OEM itself. So in China, because of the electrification from the OEM side, actually meanwhile they are also incubating a quite good a local supply chain. So as you can see here, so the OEMs actually they pushed to the local supplier tier ones, and also the local tier ones, then they also pushed more to the tier 2 and tier 3s. So I think in the past few weeks, we have also the Infineon that are going to sourcing the local silicon carbide substrate from the Chinese players. That's also a very good example. It's showing that because of the electrification, and also not only the OEMs, the vehicle brands itself, but also the supply chain is also getting a quite strong push. So that's the first point I want to share with you, because the quick and the leading position in the electrification, the playground in China is shifting quite a bit. The second point I want to discuss about is about the semiconductor, because automotive semiconductor is really a big coverage. So at Yole, and as defined in the report, we are classified based on the technologies with 11 different types of semiconductors, and plus also lightning and displays. They are not covered in the report, but they are well covered at Yole by the people working on the topics. And so that's the basic classification we have, and we noticed that there was some of them are pretty popular in China. So we'll go to see each of them. The first part I want to share with you is about the SoCs. So this is really a new part covering especially the cabin infotainment and also the ADAS functions in the car. So this is kind of really a new playground for the automotive semiconductor. And as you can see here is that it's pretty popular in China. So few local players, let's say the Semi-Drive, the Horizon Robotics, the Black Sesame Technologies, and also eCarX, which is a subsidiary of Geely. They will all have very big booths there. And their main products are the SoCs supporting the infotainment and ADAS system, and that's a very popular in China. So that's the first thing about the semiconductor side. And secondly, I think it's also it's well known that China is also doing very good in the LiDAR development and also implementation. So I think last year is kind of regarded as the starting year of a large volume implementation of LiDAR on cars. And also at the show you see there are RoboScience, Leisen, Z-Vision, and Benivik, and they are all local players from China. And also you have some international players, let's say InnoVision and Conti, they were also there. So apart from all the booths from the LiDAR players and also the old systems, actually they are embedded already in the cars. So there is a statistics from local media is that in the Shanghai Auto Show, so there are so many vehicle models, they are equipped with LiDAR. And you can see is that really a lot of local players, they are also the front runners. So that's the second point about semiconductors. And the next one is power electronics, which is really the core part of electrification. And we can also see here is that there are quite several local players. Let's say the basic semiconductor, CRRC, and also the CETC group. So they all show off their modulars, and both with silicon IGBT and also with silicon carbide MOSFET. So especially silicon carbide MOSFET is super popular in China. And apart from those two main semiconductors, we can also see some other examples. Let's say this is the example of Innovance. and they are they are developing the gallium nitride based OBC. And next part is about, okay, yeah. So about those the popular ones, there are also some others semiconductors. For example, the Chipon, that's a local MCU player. So they are showing off that how many systems you can use on the car to use their MCUs. And also this is also example of a local 4D radar supplier, Chuhang Technologies. And also, yeah, CTC is a super big company covering actually basically most of the automotive semiconductors in the show. So I would say is that overall in the automotive conference or automotive event, you see such a high level of semiconductor. That's pretty impressive. And also that's also a reflection of the strong focus of the Chinese automotive industry on the semiconductor. And we also want to make a summary about the changing supply chain situation. And so this is also the one from the report. And we can see here is that the Chinese OEMs, they have a much stronger focus on the supporting semiconductor part, and also they want to really go to more vertical integration. So this is for the power devices. You can see is that a lot of companies, basically this is all the logos in from the Chinese players, and they get into the modular packaging in-house. So that's also a reflection in the show is that the focus on the automotive semiconductor in China are much more and much leading. Yeah. And the last part is about the centralized EE architecture. So here I use the example of Voyage, which is the high-end brand of Dongfeng Group. And this is very typical. As you can see here is that, for example, the smart cockpit and also the ADAS functions using the very high performance SoC as you showed before. So that's quite already centralized. And also I think it's also following the trend set by Tesla for the body control functions. They are also going to integrate the more simple ECUs to the domain controller. And for the chassis and the powertrain domains, which is more critical and more challenging, so that's kind of still at early stage. But we already see some OEMs and the tier ones, they are trying also to use the domain controllers in the more safety sensitive domains. So in general, is that the centralized EE architecture is very popular among Chinese OEMs, and basically you see almost all the major players, they are working in-house. So here we use the very classic classification from Bosch, and showing that actually I see most of the Chinese OEMs actually they are evolving to the domain centralized architecture, and some of them also started to step into the domain fusion. Yeah. And some examples at the show, for example, this is one from XPeng. They are already evolving to the 3.5 generations of their EE architecture, and you can see it's clearly the evolutions from the distributed to the small centralized system. And also the same actually in SAIC, in HRC, and also in Great Wall. And basically you see a very similar architectures. So that's really happening in China. I mean, everybody knows the direction, but the Chinese OEMs, they are accelerating the implementation. So let's put the things together. I mean, make it simple. So China is the largest automotive market and it's still growing very fast. And then but the market is shifting because of the electrification and also the hunger for the tech. And we see semiconductor as the fundamental of the new technologies is strongly focused by the Chinese automotive societies, and also is strongly supported by the local supply chain. And then we see the EE architecture is also evolving to support this trend. So at Yole, we are developing an in-house model called CCC to evaluate the involvement of the OEM and also the OEM strategy in semiconductor. So hopefully this model will be fully explained in the coming report, and we are also looking forward to help the OEM to set up their own strategy in semiconductor. So last but not least is some more specific reports on the different topics at Yole, and if you are interested in some of them, please don't hesitate to contact with our local sales people. And also, yeah, you're also very welcome to reach me back for some further discussion. And thank you for your time for these 15 minutes, and hopefully this will be helpful to you. Bye bye.